The morning sun blazed across the naval base as Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell walked toward the firing range. At 28, she had already earned respect among her peers through dedication and exceptional marksmanship skills. The smell of salt water mixed with gun oil filled the air as she approached the outdoor training facility where several officers were conducting their monthly weapons qualification. Sarah had joined the Navy 6 years ago with dreams of serving her country and proving that women could excel in any military role. Coming from a small farming town in Iowa, she had grown up hunting with her father and grandfather, developing steady hands and sharp eyes that would later serve her well in the military. Her journey hadn't been easy. She faced skepticism and occasional hostility from some male colleagues who questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. Admiral James Harrison was already at the range when Sarah arrived. Known for his old-school mentality and traditional views about military hierarchy, Harrison commanded respect through fear rather than admiration. At 55, he had climbed the ranks during an era when the Navy was predominantly male, and he often made his opinions about changing military demographics painfully clear to those around him. The .50 caliber rifle gleamed on the equipment table, its massive frame commanding attention from everyone present. This wasn't Sarah's first time handling such powerful weaponry, but today felt different. Several junior officers watched as she methodically checked the weapon, her movements precise and confident. She had trained extensively with various firearms throughout her career, but the .50 cal demanded exceptional skill and strength to handle effectively. Admiral Harrison observed from nearby, his expression unreadable as he watched Sarah prepare for her qualification round. The tension was palpable among the other officers present, who sensed an underlying current of conflict between the seasoned admiral and the rising female officer. Some whispered among themselves while others focused intently on their own equipment, trying to avoid getting caught in any potential confrontation. As Sarah loaded the massive rounds into the rifle, she felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders. This wasn't just about personal qualification scores. It represented something larger about proving capabilities and earning respect in a challenging environment. The other officers gradually formed a loose circle around the firing line, some genuinely interested in watching exceptional marksmanship, others perhaps hoping to witness a failure that would confirm their own biases. The morning air grew still as Sarah settled into position behind the powerful weapon. Her breathing became controlled and rhythmic, a technique she had mastered through years of practice and training. The target downrange seemed impossibly distant, but her confidence remained steady. She had hit similar targets countless times before, though never under such scrutinizing circumstances. Admiral Harrison stepped closer, ostensibly to observe proper safety protocols, but his presence felt more intrusive than supervisory. His shadow fell across Sarah's shooting position as she adjusted her stance and checked her sight alignment one final time. The other officers exchanged glances, sensing that something significant was about to unfold at the firing range. The weight of the .50 caliber rifle felt familiar in Sarah's hands, despite its intimidating size. She had spent countless hours training with various weapon systems, but this particular rifle represented the pinnacle of precision shooting in her military career. Every detail mattered, from her breathing pattern to the gentle pressure she would apply to the trigger when the moment came. What started as a routine qualification exercise was quickly becoming something more consequential. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as Admiral Harrison positioned himself directly behind Sarah, close enough that she could sense his presence without turning around. Other officers began to notice the unusual dynamic developing at the firing line, though none dared to comment or intervene. Sarah's focus remained laser-sharp on the target ahead, but she couldn't ignore the growing discomfort caused by the Admiral's proximity and obvious scrutiny. This wasn't normal supervisory behavior, and everyone present seemed to recognize that fact. The morning that had begun with routine military training was evolving into something that would test more than just marksmanship, skills the powerful rifle weighted in her steady hands as Sarah prepared to demonstrate not only her shooting ability, but also her resolve under pressure. Little did she know that the next few minutes would become a defining moment in her military career, one that would be remembered and discussed long after the echoes of gunfire faded from the naval base. Sarah's finger moved toward the trigger as she aligned her shot, but Admiral Harrison suddenly reached forward and placed his hand directly on the rifle barrel. The unexpected contact startled everyone present, including Sarah, who immediately recognized this as highly inappropriate and dangerous behavior during live fire exercises. Safety protocols clearly prohibited anyone from touching another person's weapon while they were in shooting position. The Admiral's voice carried an unmistakable tone of authority, mixed with condescension as he spoke. "Lieutenant Commander, I don't think you're quite ready for this level of weaponry. Perhaps you should step aside and let someone with more experience handle the .50 cal today." His hand remained firmly on the rifle barrel, effectively preventing Sarah from continuing her qualification exercise. A wave of anger and determination surged through Sarah as she realized what was happening. This wasn't about safety concerns or genuine doubt about her abilities. This was about power, control, and the Admiral's apparent belief that she didn't belong at this level of military service. She had encountered similar attitudes throughout her career, but never so blatantly displayed in front of other officers during an official exercise. The other officers watched in stunned silence as the confrontation unfolded before them. Some shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the inappropriate nature of the Admiral's intervention, while others seemed curious about how Sarah would respond to such a direct challenge to her authority and competence. The morning training session had suddenly transformed into a test of wills between two very different philosophies about military service. Sarah's training kicked in as she assessed the situation quickly and professionally. She knew that how she handled this moment would likely define her reputation among her peers and potentially impact her future career prospects. Backing down would send a message that she accepted the Admiral's assessment of her capabilities, while pushing back too aggressively could be seen as insubordination against a superior officer. With calm determination, Sarah maintained her grip on the rifle while making direct eye contact with Admiral Harrison. "Sir, I am fully qualified and certified to operate this weapons system. I would appreciate the opportunity to complete my required qualification as scheduled." Her voice remained steady and professional, despite the obvious tension of the situation. Admiral Harrison's expression hardened as he realized Sarah wasn't going to simply step aside as he had commanded. His grip on the rifle barrel tightened slightly, creating a physical power struggle that was unprecedented in the experience of most officers present. The standoff represented more than just a disagreement about weapons handling. It symbolized broader conflicts about military tradition, gender roles, and changing dynamics within the armed forces. Several seconds passed in tense silence as neither Sarah nor the Admiral yielded their position. The other officers found themselves witnessing a confrontation that would likely have consequences extending far beyond the firing range. Some began to worry about their own positions. If they were forced to choose sides or provide testimony about what they had observed. Sarah could feel the Admiral's resistance as she gently but firmly began to move the rifle back into proper firing position. Her years of physical training and determination gave her confidence that she could maintain control of her weapon, despite the Admiral's interference. The situation was rapidly approaching a point where one of them would have to concede, and Sarah had no intention of being the one to back down. The morning sun climbed higher as the standoff continued, casting harsh shadows across the firing range. Other training activities had effectively stopped as word of the confrontation spread among the personnel present. What had begun as routine weapons qualification was becoming a watershed moment that would test military protocol, personal conviction, and the complex dynamics of authority within the naval command structure. Admiral Harrison seemed surprised by Sarah's resolve and physical strength as she began to assert control over her weapon. His initial expectation that she would simply defer to his authority was clearly not being met, and he appeared uncertain about how to proceed without escalating the situation further. The presence of multiple witnesses complicated his options for resolving the confrontation on his preferred terms. Sarah's breathing remained controlled and steady as she prepared to break free from the Admiral's interference and complete her qualification exercise. She understood that the next few moments would determine not only the immediate outcome of this confrontation, but also establish important precedents about respect, authority, and competence that could influence her entire military career and the careers of other women serving alongside her. Without warning, Sarah executed a swift and decisive movement that caught Admiral Harrison completely off guard. Using techniques learned during her military combat training, She twisted the rifle barrel away from his grasp, while simultaneously shifting her body position to break his hold entirely. The movement was so fluid and precise that it took only seconds for her to regain complete control of her weapon. Admiral Harrison stumbled backward slightly, clearly shocked by Sarah's quick response and the effectiveness of her countermaneuver. His face flushed red with a mixture of embarrassment and anger, as he realized that his attempt to assert dominance had backfired spectacularly in front of multiple witnesses. The other officers exchanged glances, many of them impressed by Sarah's skill and composure under pressure. Sarah immediately returned to her proper firing stance, her movements crisp and professional as if the interruption had never occurred. Her breathing remained steady, her grip firm and her focus laser-sharp on the target downrange. The incident with the Admiral had lasted only moments, but her quick resolution demonstrated both her physical capabilities and her mental toughness under challenging circumstances. The firing range fell, silent except for the sound of wind rustling through the base structures. Admiral Harrison stood several feet away, his authority having been challenged and his interference effectively neutralized by Sarah's decisive action. The other officers watched with anticipation, knowing they were about to witness either exceptional marksmanship or a potential failure that would give the Admiral ammunition for his criticism. Sarah's first shot rang out across the range with a thunderous crack that echoed off nearby buildings. The .50 caliber rifle's recoil was substantial, but she absorbed it smoothly and maintained her position for the follow-up shots. Through her scope, she could see that her first round had struck the target with precision, landing exactly where she had aimed despite the earlier disruption. The second shot followed quickly, demonstrating Sarah's ability to maintain accuracy while managing the powerful weapon's significant recoil. Her training and natural shooting ability were evident as she worked the bolt action smoothly and repositioned for her third shot. The rhythm she established was methodical and confident, showing no signs of nervousness or uncertainty. Admiral Harrison watched with growing discomfort as Sarah continued her qualification exercise with obvious skill and composure. Each successful shot undermined his earlier assertion that she wasn't ready for this level of weaponry. The other officers began to murmur among themselves, recognizing they were witnessing exceptional marksmanship under extraordinary circumstances. Sarah's fourth shot maintained the same high standard of accuracy as the previous three. Her breathing technique, body position, and trigger control all reflected years of dedicated training and natural talent. The morning sun had climbed higher, but she remained focused entirely on the task at hand, blocking out all distractions including the uncomfortable presence of the Admiral nearby. The fifth shot demonstrated Sarah's consistency and reliability under pressure. Despite the earlier confrontation and the scrutiny of multiple observers, she maintained the same level of precision that had characterized her shooting throughout her military career. The target downrange showed a tight grouping of shots that would exceed the qualification standards by a significant margin. As Sarah prepared for her sixth and final shot, the tension on the firing range was palpable. Admiral Harrison's face showed a mixture of anger and grudging respect as he watched her performance. The other officers had stopped their own activities entirely, recognizing they were witnessing something remarkable. Not just excellent marksmanship, but a powerful demonstration of competence and determination. The sixth shot cracked across the range with the same authority as the previous five. Sarah maintained her position for several seconds after firing, following proper safety protocols while savoring the satisfaction of a qualification exercise completed under extraordinary circumstances. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the distant sounds of other base activities. Slowly, Sarah engaged the rifle's safety and began the process of securing her weapon. Her movements remained professional and methodical, showing no signs of the stress or emotion that the confrontation might have caused. She had not only completed her qualification successfully, but had done so while demonstrating grace under pressure that impressed even her critics. The other officers began to approach the firing line to examine the target, their expressions ranging from admiration to amazement. Admiral Harrison remained where he stood, his earlier confidence replaced by visible frustration at how the morning's events had unfolded. The power dynamic that he had tried to establish had been completely reversed by Sarah's competence and determination. The range officer approached the target with measuring equipment, his expression showing anticipation as he examined Sarah's shot grouping. The 6 rounds had created a cluster so tight that several officers had to look twice to confirm that all shots had actually hit the target. The grouping measured less than 3 inches across at a distance of 800 yards, a performance that exceeded expert-level standards by any military measure. News of Sarah's exceptional shooting performance spread quickly throughout the naval base. Within hours, officers from other units were discussing the incident and the remarkable accuracy she had demonstrated under pressure. The story took on additional significance because of the confrontation with Admiral Harrison, making it both a tale of outstanding marksmanship and a lesson about determination in the face of adversity. Admiral Harrison left the firing range without comment, his departure noticed by everyone present. His failure to acknowledge Sarah's performance or address his earlier interference created an awkward atmosphere that lingered long after he had gone. The other officers found themselves in the uncomfortable position of having witnessed a superior officer's behavior that violated both safety protocols and professional courtesy. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, who had been observing from a nearby firing position, approached Sarah as she completed her weapon cleaning routine. "That was incredible shooting, especially considering what happened earlier," he said quietly. "I've never seen anyone maintain that level of accuracy after dealing with that kind of interference. You handled the whole situation perfectly." Sarah appreciated the support from her colleague, but she also understood that the incident would likely have consequences extending beyond the firing range. Admiral Harrison was not known for forgetting perceived slights, and his humiliation in front of multiple witnesses would probably result in increased scrutiny of her performance in other areas. She would need to be prepared for potential retaliation. The weapons maintenance sergeant, a veteran with 25 years of service, shook his head in amazement as he examined the target results. "Ma'am, in all my years running this range, I've rarely seen shooting like that from anyone, regardless of rank or experience. The fact that you did it after dealing with that situation makes it even more impressive. That's the kind of performance that gets remembered for a long time." Word of the incident reached Captain Williams, Sarah's direct supervisor, within 2 hours. He called her to his office that afternoon, partly to discuss the shooting performance, but mainly to address the confrontation with Admiral Harrison. The conversation would be delicate, as it involved potential criticism of a superior officer while acknowledging exceptional performance under difficult circumstances. Sarah entered Captain Williams's office with the same composure she had shown on the firing range. She understood that how she presented the morning's events could influence not only her own career, but also set precedents for how similar situations might be handled in the future. Her account needed to be factual, professional, and focused on the facts rather than emotions or personal opinions. Captain Williams listened carefully as Sarah described the Admiral's interference with her weapon and her response to the situation. He took notes while she spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timing, safety protocols, and the presence of witnesses. His expression remained neutral throughout the conversation, giving no indication of his personal views about what had occurred. The captain's questions focused particularly on the moment when Sarah broke free from the Admiral's hold on her rifle. He wanted to understand exactly what techniques she had used and whether her actions could be viewed as appropriate responses to unsafe interference with her weapon. This aspect of the incident would be crucial if formal complaints or investigations were initiated. Sarah explained that her training had taught her to maintain control of her weapon at all times and to respond decisively to any interference that could compromise safety or mission effectiveness. Her actions had been defensive rather than aggressive, aimed at regaining proper control of her firearm rather than confronting the Admiral personally. The distinction was important for potential disciplinary considerations. Captain Williams also wanted details about the shooting performance itself, recognizing that exceptional marksmanship under pressure could be relevant to Sarah's future assignments and advancement opportunities. The combination of outstanding technical skill and grace under pressure demonstrated qualities that the Navy valued highly in its officers, especially those being considered for leadership positions. The conversation lasted nearly an hour, covering not only the specific events of the morning but also broader questions about military protocol, safety procedures, and appropriate responses to challenging situations. Captain Williams concluded by telling Sarah that he would need to file a report about the incident, but he also commended her professionalism and shooting performance. As Sarah left the captain's office, she reflected on how quickly a routine training exercise had become a defining moment in her career. The morning had tested her technical skills, physical capabilities, and professional judgment in ways she had never anticipated. The outcome had been positive, but she understood that the full consequences might not be apparent for weeks or months to come. Within 3 days, Admiral Harrison filed a formal complaint against Sarah, alleging insubordination and improper conduct during the firing range exercise. His official report described her actions as aggressive and disrespectful, claiming that she had physically resisted legitimate supervision and created a dangerous situation by refusing to yield control of her weapon when directed by a superior officer. The complaint triggered an immediate investigation by the Naval Inspector General's office. Investigators arrived at the base within a week to interview witnesses and examine evidence related to the incident. Sarah found herself in the unusual position of being both commended for exceptional marksmanship and criticized for her handling of the confrontation with Admiral Harrison. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and 4 other officers who had witnessed the incident were called to provide testimony about what they had observed. Their accounts consistently supported Sarah's version of events, describing the Admiral's interference as unexpected and potentially dangerous, while characterizing her response as professional and appropriate given the circumstances. The weapons maintenance sergeant provided particularly compelling testimony about safety protocols. The investigation revealed that Admiral Harrison had no legitimate authority to interrupt Sarah's qualification exercise and that his physical interference with her weapon violated multiple safety regulations. Naval firing range protocols specifically prohibited anyone, except the designated range safety officer, from touching another person's firearm during live fire exercises, and the Admiral held no such designation. Sarah's shooting performance became a significant factor in the investigation when examiners reviewed the target results and timing records. The fact that she had achieved expert-level accuracy despite the disruption demonstrated exceptional composure and skill. Investigators noted that most personnel would have been severely affected by such interference, making her performance even more remarkable. Captain Williams's initial report supported Sarah's account of the events and praised her professionalism throughout the incident. His documentation included detailed descriptions of proper safety protocols and explanations of why Sarah's actions were not only appropriate, but necessary to maintain weapon security and range safety. The report became crucial evidence in her defense. The investigation expanded when other officers came forward with similar stories about Admiral Harrison's behavior toward female personnel. 3 women reported incidents where the Admiral had questioned their competence or made inappropriate comments about their fitness for military service. While these incidents didn't involve physical confrontations, they established a pattern of discriminatory behavior. News of the investigation spread throughout the naval command structure, creating discussions about leadership, gender equality, and appropriate conduct between officers of different ranks. The case became a test of how seriously the Navy would address complaints about discriminatory behavior, especially when they involved high-ranking officials with long service records. Sarah continued her regular duties while the investigation proceeded, but she found herself under increased scrutiny from both supporters and critics. Some colleagues went out of their way to show support for her position, while others maintained careful distance to avoid becoming involved in the controversy. The polarized reactions reflected broader tensions within the military about changing demographics and traditional hierarchies. Admiral Harrison's supporters argued that his long service record and distinguished career should count heavily in his favor, while critics pointed out that seniority didn't justify inappropriate behavior or safety violations. The debate highlighted fundamental questions about accountability and whether military rank should provide protection from consequences for misconduct. The weapons qualification scores from that day became official evidence in the case, with Sarah's exceptional performance serving as proof that she possessed the skills and composure necessary for her military role. The precise measurements of her shot grouping were entered into the record, along with testimony from range personnel about the difficulty of achieving such accuracy under normal circumstances. Media attention began to focus on the case when details leaked to military publications and veteran advocacy groups. The story resonated with many service members who had experienced similar challenges related to gender discrimination or inappropriate behavior from superior officers. Sarah found herself becoming an unintentional symbol for broader issues within military culture. The investigation team spent 2 weeks reviewing evidence, interviewing witnesses, and examining military regulations related to the incident. Their preliminary findings supported Sarah's account of events and raised serious questions about Admiral Harrison's conduct and judgment. The case was beginning to look like a clear vindication of her actions and a condemnation of the Admiral's behavior. As the investigation neared its conclusion, Sarah reflected on how the incident had changed her perspective on military service and her own career goals. The experience had been stressful and challenging, but it had also demonstrated her ability to perform under pressure and stand up for herself when necessary. The outcome would likely influence her future opportunities and the experiences of other women in similar situations. The Naval Inspector General's office released its findings after a thorough 3-week investigation that examined every aspect of the firing range incident. The report completely exonerated Sarah of any wrongdoing and found that her actions were not only appropriate, but exemplary given the circumstances she faced. The investigators praised her professionalism, safety consciousness, and remarkable composure under pressure. Admiral Harrison faced formal disciplinary action for multiple violations of military protocol and safety regulations. The findings detailed his improper interference with weapons training, his violation of range safety procedures, and his abuse of authority in attempting to prevent a qualified officer from completing required training. The investigation also cited his failure to follow proper channels for addressing any genuine concerns about personnel qualifications. The disciplinary board recommended that Admiral Harrison receive a formal reprimand and mandatory training on contemporary military leadership, principles, and equal opportunity policies. While some observers felt the punishment was too lenient given the severity of his actions, the decision reflected the complex realities of military justice and the challenges of disciplining senior officers with long service records. Sarah's exceptional shooting performance during the incident earned her recognition that extended far beyond the original investigation. The Navy's Marksmanship Command took notice of her scores and requested detailed information about her training background and experience. Her ability to maintain expert-level accuracy under extreme pressure marked her as someone with exceptional potential for specialized assignments. The case became a landmark example within military education. Programs about proper conduct, safety protocols, and professional behavior between officers of different ranks. Sarah's handling of the situation was highlighted as a model for maintaining professionalism while asserting legitimate rights and responsibilities. Her story became required reading in several leadership development courses. Captain Williams received commendation for his thorough and impartial handling of the initial report and his support for proper military protocols throughout the investigation. His documentation and leadership during the incident were cited as examples of how commanders should respond when subordinates face inappropriate treatment from superior officers. The recognition enhanced his own career prospects significantly. The other officers who provided witness testimony were protected from any retaliation through official military whistleblower policies. Their willingness to come forward with accurate accounts of what they had observed was crucial to the investigation's success and demonstrated the importance of integrity and courage in maintaining military standards. Several received recognition for their honesty and moral courage. Sarah's career trajectory changed dramatically following the incident and investigation. Her combination of technical excellence, moral courage, and grace under pressure brought her to the attention of senior Navy leadership, who were looking for officers with the qualities needed for challenging assignments. She received several offers for advanced training programs and specialized positions that would accelerate her career advancement. The shooting range where the incident occurred implemented new safety protocols and training procedures based on lessons learned from the investigation. All personnel received updated instruction on appropriate conduct during weapons training and clear guidelines about when and how supervisory intervention should occur. The changes helped ensure that similar incidents would be prevented in the future. Admiral Harrison's career effectively ended with his disciplinary action, as he chose to retire rather than face continued scrutiny and limited advancement opportunities. His departure was viewed by many as overdue recognition that military leadership required more than just seniority and traditional authority. The Navy's handling of his case sent a clear message about expectations for professional conduct. Sarah was invited to speak at several military conferences about leadership, professionalism, and maintaining standards under pressure. Her presentations focused on the importance of training, preparation, and staying true to military values even in challenging circumstances. She became an inspiring example for young officers, particularly women who faced similar challenges in their careers. The incident also led to broader policy discussions within the Department of Defense about preventing discrimination and ensuring that all service members could perform their duties without facing inappropriate interference or harassment. Sarah's experience became part of the evidence base for strengthening protective policies and enforcement mechanisms throughout the military. Recognition of Sarah's marksmanship skills led to an invitation to join the Navy's Admiral competitive shooting team, where she could represent her service in national and international competitions. The opportunity would allow her to continue developing her exceptional shooting abilities while serving as a positive representative of military excellence and professionalism. The media coverage of the case, while initially uncomfortable for Sarah, ultimately helped highlight important issues about military culture and the ongoing evolution of armed forces demographics. Her story resonated with many Americans who supported equal opportunity and professional treatment for all service members regardless of gender or background. 6 months after the firing range incident, Sarah stood at the podium of the Naval Academy's Leadership Symposium, addressing a packed auditorium of midshipmen and junior officers. Her presentation about courage, professionalism, and maintaining standards under pressure had become one of the most requested talks in military education circles. The young faces looking up at her reminded her of her own early days in the Navy, filled with determination and hope. The story of her confrontation with Admiral Harrison had become legendary within naval circles. But Sarah always emphasized the broader lessons rather than the personal drama. She spoke about the importance of thorough training, the value of staying calm under pressure, and the necessity of standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. Her message resonated particularly strongly with female service members who faced their own challenges. Sarah's career had flourished beyond her wildest expectations following the incident. She had been promoted to commander ahead of schedule and selected for the Navy's most prestigious advanced leadership program. Her shooting skills had earned her a place on the International Military Marksmanship Team, where she competed against the world's best military shooters and consistently ranked among the top performers. The .50 caliber rifle that had been central to the famous incident was retired from active service and now displayed in the Naval Academy's museum with a plaque describing the importance of professional conduct and exceptional performance under pressure. Visitors often asked about the story behind the exhibit, leading to discussions about military values and the evolution of armed forces culture. Admiral Harrison's forced retirement had created opportunities for more progressive leadership within the naval hierarchy. His replacement, Admiral Maria Santos, became the first Hispanic woman to hold that position and made diversity and inclusion her top priorities. The changing of the guard represented broader shifts within military culture that Sarah had helped accelerate through her courage and professionalism. Captain Williams, who had supported Sarah throughout the investigation, was promoted to Admiral and assigned to oversee personnel development across the Pacific Fleet. His leadership during the incident had marked him as someone who could handle sensitive situations with integrity and wisdom. He frequently cited Sarah's case as an example of how proper support for subordinates could lead to positive outcomes for everyone involved. The naval base where the incident occurred became a model for professional conduct and safety protocols. The enhanced training programs and clear guidelines that were implemented following the investigation were adopted throughout the Navy's training facilities. Sarah occasionally returned to the base to observe training exercises and was always impressed by the professional atmosphere that had been established. Sarah's shooting performance from that memorable morning remained unmatched in the base's record books. New personnel often heard the story during their orientation and were inspired by the example of technical excellence combined with moral courage. The tight shot grouping she had achieved under extraordinary circumstances became a standard that others aspired to reach. The investigation report from Sarah's case became required reading in military justice. Courses and leadership development programs, law schools and military academies used it as a case study for examining issues of authority, accountability, and appropriate responses to workplace harassment. The thorough documentation served as a model for how such investigations should be conducted. 3 years after the incident, Sarah was selected for promotion to captain and assigned to command her own ship. The appointment represented not only recognition of her exceptional abilities, but also confidence in her leadership potential. Her crew respected her combination of technical competence, moral courage, and professional integrity that had been demonstrated so clearly during the firing range confrontation. The other officers who had witnessed the original incident remained in contact with Sarah and often reflected on how the experience had influenced their own careers. Several had been promoted and credited Sarah's example with inspiring them to maintain high standards and speak up when they witnessed inappropriate behavior. The ripple effects of that morning continued to influence military culture years later. Sarah's story had become part of naval folklore, passed down through generations of officers as an example of how to handle adversity with grace and determination. Young women entering military service often heard about her experience and drew inspiration from her example. The incident that had begun as a challenge to her authority had ultimately become a powerful demonstration of professional excellence. Standing at her ship's bridge during her first command assignment, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The confrontation with Admiral Harrison had been difficult and stressful, but it had also revealed her own strength and capabilities. The 6 shots that had defined her reputation were just the beginning of a career dedicated to excellence, integrity, and service to her country. The morning sun gleamed off the ocean as Sarah's ship prepared for deployment, just as it had gleamed off the firing range where her defining moment had occurred. The lessons learned that day continued to guide her decisions and inspire her leadership. Her story had become proof that standing up for what's right, maintaining professional standards, and performing with excellence under pressure could overcome any challenge and create positive change that extended far beyond a single moment in time.